Well, hi guys, welcome to the session. Hopefully this finds you very well. My name's Paul, this is Plan Z, and in this little session I want to share with you what I understand about EQs and how to manage those in the digital realm, which is a difficult thing to do if you're not used to doing it. It's something you need to train your ears to do, so I want to show you a few patches. A couple of them will help you. One will help you do that, and I'm going to ask you to set up a side somewhere in your modeler to just set up a patch like it so you can help train your ears if you want to understand more about EQs. But to start with, I just want to kind of understand the basics with you. The last few videos I've been diving deep into the EQs, trying to understand how to solve certain problems when using the stock cabinets that come with GT1000, but also with my two notes, making sure that the frequencies I'm feeding both are the right frequencies. So I thought it'd be a good idea to do a little video that just, puts everyone on the same page. So if you have an advanced understanding of EQ, this video probably isn't for you. Although I think there was a time I thought I had an advanced understanding and I probably didn't. And I probably don't now. But I understand enough that I'm able to share with you, hopefully, some tools that will help empower us, particularly if you find yourself always reaching for a graphic EQ because you're not quite sure how a parametric EQ works. What the freaking hell is a Q anyway? So let's get into all of it. I'm going to try and cover some of the fundamentals that we just need to understand, because it will help us understand some of the more complex stuff in an easier way. All right, because actually it's really simple. It's just sometimes the terminology confuses us. So what we're going to do is going to have two lines here. Let's make them more or less the same size. This here is 0 hertz. Now we measure frequencies in hertz. So at this end we get up to 20,000, so kilohertz, and hertz, 0 hertz, kilohertz. At 1K we cross over into kilohertz. Okay, so and our signal with a full frequency unit like a GT unit is flat like this. So you put your guitar in, turn all the blocks off, all your frequencies come through, or at least all the frequencies that a guitar will generate. Now a guitar isn't generating frequencies down at 20 hertz down here, or 40 hertz. There might be a bit of woof and sub coming off it, and we start around 80 hertz and then go through probably to about 5k, 6k, something like that, where we start wanting to manage our high end. Okay, so this line though I've put at what's known as 0 dB, decibels. All right, now on a master output or on a parametric EQ, so we have a parametric EQ on our output. We'll start talking and understanding parametric EQs, and then I want to explain to you the differences between, in a bit more detail, the differences between graphic and parametric, and then how to use them as tools effectively. Ever found yourself twisting a knob and you can't hear or seem to understand what it seems to be doing? Yeah, well, here we go. So let's start looking at this tone here. Here we have on the far right of our output, we have the gain knob. And this, as you'll know from having an amplifier or anything that's got a gain knob on it, will take the gain and increase it or decrease it. And here we're taking our line, the line that we've shaped, and at the moment it's just a straight line, we haven't shaped it. We can take that line and increase it all the way up to the top, all the way down to the bottom. 0 dB, from 0 dB down to -12, you're not going to hear anything, okay? So that's your gain knob, and that's what that does. Next to that, we've got a high gain knob, and then down here we've got a low gain knob. So let's go green with those. What we're going to do is talk about the frequency spectrum now. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to just signify, let's say 100 hertz here, and say 400 here, and I'm going to just pop in 3k, 4k, okay, and we'll go up, and yeah, but just so we're orientated on our line. Now I believe that somewhere for the low gain one, somewhere around the 200 mark, could be slightly more, slightly less, there's a hinge, and the same applies around the 3k. there's a hinge. And with the low gain, imagine what you've got is you've got this frequency line. This part of the line is on a hinge, and you can do this with it in that area only. All right, it only affects that area. Same at this end. All right, so we can do that and do the same thing. It's on a hinge. Now, the other thing we can do that is a high-low specific is another two knobs that are on a separate page, which are called the low cut and the high cut. Hopefully that's on the screen there, low cut, high cut. And what that does is a slightly different tool. It removes frequencies below a specific point. So with a parametric EQ, what we're doing is we're choosing the frequency and then working with or without that. So here, let's take our high cut to about 5. So what that will do is it will slope off the frequencies to 0, and we won't have any of this audio. All right? So we get rid of that chunk. And here, let's take our low cut, and let's actually go to about 125. Actually, yeah, let's go 125. Yeah, because I want to be clear of drums and bass, so I'm going to scoop off just there, and we're going to do that. So now we've lost this audio here, okay? And that leaves some nice space in our song for the drums and bass to have some fun. Now, we can shape, remember what we've taken with our hinges now. We've taken a lot of highs and lows using our cut, so I might at some point want to boost this, and when I do, I'm going to do that, and it will release any frequencies between here and here and create a little bump of boost, all right? But we're going to get there in just a little minute. I want to talk to you about the strategy for this first. So now let's talk about the other three knobs, and this leads us to the mysterious Q. We've got our frequency knob, our Q knob, and our gain knob. So like our gain knob over here, this gain knob does exactly the same thing, only it operates specifically the gain for the region you've chosen using these two knobs. Now if you're touching what is in the GT1000 called a medium frequency, or mid frequency, it's actually not, it's in any frequency from 20 hertz through to about 16 kilohertz. So you can, this knob here, if you're turning it and going, I don't hear a difference, I don't understand what it doesn't do anything until you do something with this. And depending on what you've got this set to, again, you might struggle to hear it depending on what you're pushing. So let's understand, with this knob, we're selecting the frequency. We're doing that. So let's select a frequency. So let's go here. Let's call that 500. Let's now decide, we know we want to take that frequency out, but how much of that frequency area do we want to take out? Is it 500 that's killing us, but actually 550 is quite nice, and also so is 450. Do we want to remove all of that, or do we just want to surgically remove 5 by half, by minus 6 dB? So I can remove that nasty frequency and still retain the niceness. And I do that using the Q. Now the Q goes from 0.5, we have 1, 2, and then it's, I think it's 4, 8, 16. Q of 16 is a spike, and a Q of 5 is wide. So think of it like this. If you're fishing for frequencies, you cast a big net. But if you know the frequency you want, and it's a fish, you're going to catch it with a rod maybe, and you're going to use a very specific line. So the closer you get to 16, the more specific you are. So let's understand what that looks like. If we're cutting 500, and I've cut it on 16 at the moment, if I open this up, so let's just go to a Q of, let's say, 2 in the middle, it's going to look more like that. All right? Now that is the default position for most graphic EQs. We're going to get into the differences in a moment. So with a graphic EQ, this is the reason they put parametric EQ on the output, is a graphic EQ doesn't give us the control we need to shape our tone. It actually sucks our tone. We've taken out the 10% that we needed to, but we've also taken out another 40% either side of it. And that's stuff that we want. Are you with me? So the Q helps you manage the shape of your net. All right, and then the gain is simply how much or how little we could boost there. So here, let's do the opposite. Let's boost that on a wider Q. We'd do that. That's just going the other way with the gain knob. All right. So now let's just have a little look. Now that we understand a little bit about the controls, the frequency spectrum, and how these things can affect us, let's now just have a little look at a graphic EQ. Now, a graphic EQ. In a GT1000 or most units, I use graphic EQs most of my life. I think I talked about that at the beginning. I can't remember. I've tried to record this video a couple of times, and each time there's been a problem. The problem's usually me or external. So, but there we go. So with a graphic EQ, we'll have faders. So let's go. We've got, let's say, a 30, 60, 125 we're given. We've got 250. We've got 500. Then we have 1K, so there's a really big gap between 500 and 1K. There's big gaps here. And to a guitarist, this is kind of useless. You just want to load, just take it out. But 1K, then 2K, then 4K, then 8, and then 16. And these are faders that are usually on a stomp box. You'd just pull up and down the faders, and then you'd have an overall level to adjust your shape of your mix. So using this, I'm just going to draw a line that's my signal chain, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my low cut. I'm going to come in at 125. I might even want to give that a little boost because I feel like I've lost low end, but then I've got some boominess around 200, so I'm going to take 250 out because it's what I've got. I need to deal with the mid-range, so we know we're going to drop that out, and I probably want to boost somewhere around here, and we'll see how my amp sounds as to whether or not I want to cut or boost either of these frequencies, but I'm definitely taking out that, and I probably might bring this down a touch. All right, so let's come in at 0 dB being about here, and I'm doing my low cut, so that's the 30, the 60 out. I'm going to come in, I'm going to come up, and here I'm going to just go above the 0, and then we're going to come across, and we're going to take away our 250, and it's on a quite wide Q, remember. We're going to come up here. Oh, we want to be taking 500, quick, down, we need less of that, so we're going to come back up again. We want 1K now, so we need another lump. Let's we've pushed the 1K a bit too much. Let's take off a bit of 2K. This is a region where the guitar lives, so we need to be careful around 2K. But maybe we want a bit of brightness, so let's go 4K and then off. And I've got my lumpy signal, and the guitar is sounding okay. It's sounding quite good. Let's shape this now with parametric EQ. Now, from a session I did earlier, I think I might even have. Let's have a little look. If I've got a piece of paper that has the frequencies on it. Sorry about my little faff and rummage. I seem to have moved it, probably in my frustration. Right, so what we're going to do now is with the parametric EQ, 0 dB. I'm going to use my low cut, and I'm going to do the same. So I'm going to take out to 125 Hertz. I'm going to come across, and I discovered that I don't like 160, slice. Didn't like 250, slice. Didn't like 315, slice. Got to 500, and what I did was, as I created using the assigns, in a medium gain, I take a Q of 4, so a slightly wider Q, but in a high gain, that Q goes to a slightly wider Q again, I think, to 2, I think. I can't remember now. We'll have a look when we get into the patch. So this changes depending on the gain, which is good. And then I found, because I was working in the Vox, I didn't really need to do anything else to the low mids. They were really nice. Didn't push around 1K, but what I did want was some bite. So I then did a little boost. And you want to boost on wider Q. So I did a boost here. And I've done another surgical Q at 2.5. Where are we? 2.5K. So this is 1.6 here. Done a little surgical cut, -6, that should be to about this point. And then when I get into the highs, I found, I think it was in the Vox, there's a 4K, 5K situation going on. So I've taken those out and I've actually done my cut here. So the cut comes out at 5 and off to there. All right. So now we don't have these frequencies, those frequencies. This, I've got really big holes in my tone. This, I'm able to push larger areas when I want it, and I don't have to push it so hard to get the effect I want, but the problem areas are surgically removed and my tone has very little gaps in it. Are you understanding my point? So now I go, right, so this low end here, I want to get more low end. And rather than boosting my 125 hertz, which I've had to do in my graphic EQ, I'm taking the low gain knob and I'm boosting all the low gains. So the one that's on the hinge, but I'm doing this after the amp. So I'm cleaning up my low. So the amp is here, and I'm dealing, these frequencies are dealt with before the amp, these frequencies after the amp. All right? So then I'm creating a boost here that's going up like that. So it's bringing out these frequencies here. It's also bringing these up, but remember, I've cut them really deep, so we're not going to hear them. They're not going to bother us. In actual fact, last night, when I tested this out, I could get to +6 dB on the bass in my EQ after the amp, and there was no booming, there was no rattling, it was nice, clean, low end. It was really good. And because my mids weren't being completely eaten away here, the low mids, I still had really nice punch in the low end. The mud, there was no mud to clean up in here on the Vox, but I did want to manage the higher mids. Okay, so now let's start to understand. Hopefully you're understanding the strategy and it's coming together. I feel like I'm in a bit of a muddle. I'm sick of hearing my own voice. But what we're going to do now is get into the master output to start with, and then I'm going to show you a couple of patches. So let's just get this now to focus on there. Let's see if we can't make that a bit bigger for your watching pleasure. Can we just, no, if I move that anymore it will turn off the camera. And what I'm going to do is just pick up a guitar. Right, so we're on the Les Paul because it's rich in mids. And our first patch, actually to get to it I just need to go here. What we've got is a strategy with EQ I've talked you through what I did, but we're going to look at it in real terms, play around with it in a moment. But in here, I've got 2 notes there, and I've got GT1000 here. So at the moment, I've got no EQ, just the amp, I've got high gain, all the frequencies, nothing's been edited yet. We've got a Ribbon 121 on the left, we're using the Vox cab from the last update, medium in the center, and on the right we've got a 57 medium 3 centimeters off. Okay, so now what we're going to do is going to go to the main output, where I'm going to go to my sub. It would be your main output for you, or your sub. Remember, it's duplicating if you're using it the way the unit is sent out. I'm using mine differently, so I'm going to go into the global EQ where nothing is happening. All the cuts are off, no low cut, no high cut. Remember, this is the one that takes all the frequencies away. The one that boosts your low is there. The one that boosts your high is the high gain here. This is the overall gain, the level, so we can go up or down there. Now here are the 3 knobs I was talking about, but they're in different places of the unit. They put them differently, I think, if I remember right. So here we've got the gain. So this is the amount of which we're going to affect the frequency up or down in level. So the same as the master, but it's only going to affect the region we tell it to. This knob allows us to select the frequency. So this is the one that's doing that, selecting which one do we want. And a wah-wah is basically doing that. Yeah, it's going up and down through the frequencies on a certain cue pushed in a certain way, okay? More or less, fundamentally. And here is our cue. So when it's on 0.5, it's wide. When it's on 2, it's not so wide, so a bit like a graphic EQ. And the closer to 16 we get, the tighter it gets to when we get to 16, where we're literally, it's a notch cue, and it's like just taking a slice out. Okay? And that's how that works. So hopefully visually, what we can start to do now is think of this as being the straight line, that what we're going to do is create a bump in. So I'm going to create a spike in the audio, and I'm going to take that spike down to 20 hertz, so the bottom here. I'm going to go to 12. I'm doubling the frequencies, so I'm exaggerating what we hear. I'm going to go to the neck pickup of my guitar, and we're going to go through the frequency range so you can hear what these different regions do to your tone. So, and you might not hear anything until about 80 hertz. Remember, the guitar, it doesn't really live in this region. So I'm just going to strum and twist. There's a honker. That's nice. Now these mids will seem intense because we're on a very tight cue. We're now up to 2K. Horrible. Now this region, depending on the amp, the next 3 frequencies, 4 or 5 frequencies, you want to fish around in your highs. Let's go back. How many of you cutting 6.3K? Even I'm guilty of it. Okay, so we're going to hear very little up here. Alright, so I've just gone through to the end. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pick a frequency, let's say 1K, right in the middle. And we're going to start out on a Q of 16, and we're going to see what happens when we widen our net. And remember, when I make this go left, so towards 0.5, our spike is going from being like that up, and we're going to open it up gradually. All right? Phone's telling me I need battery. Hopefully that didn't interrupt course. So here we go. We're at 1K. Let's open this up. Graphic EQ territory. Okay, so you can hear we're getting very loud now. What we should do is take down this to, I'm gonna, so we can still hear it. Let's go 6. So let's go back. And what's happening here is we're catching a lot of the frequencies either side, so we're getting a lot of the low end that we have down in the 6 to 800 areas, closer to your kind of 800, and we're also probably picking up towards the kind of 1.6 area towards 2K. Okay, so that's probably a little too much, and we're probably well boosted there. So on like a graphic EQ, if you went 6 dB, you'd be there. But you could, if you wanted to, catch a slightly wider area, so go between the two and just drop by a couple of dB. Let's just drop it actually, so this is having no effect. Let's increase it. And there's my meat. Okay, so we've got the frequencies we want around that area on a slightly wider area than we might have if we had a graphic EQ. Okay, so this is just the output. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave all of that where it is, and just by turning down the mid gain, which should just say gain or frequency, that's how you need to think of it. By leaving that at 0, nothing is happening. Alright, nothing's happening at all. Doesn't matter what the other knobs are doing, if that knob's at 0, none of those 3 knobs we were talking about are working. So now let's just take what we learnt, and I'll show you how I implemented that into a strategy I know works with digital amps. So my first EQ is dealing with the low cut. I'm coming in at 125 watts. And I'm going to take out that boomy 160 on a Q of 16, so the surgical Q, -6. I'm going to do the same with 250. And you can see here I've not adjusted the level. These are frequencies you need to remove. They're not, you don't need to boost yourself afterwards. This is stuff that just shouldn't be there, okay? So let's turn that block on, see the impact it has. Okay, we seem a bit more mid-focused. And we seem to need to want to push our lows, so we'll look at a strategy for that in a moment. Let's go to the next EQ block where I'm still dealing with lows. I found 1.3 was a honker before the amp, so I took it out, -6, and I do my low mid cut here, and this is the one I spoke to you about where I've got it assigned to go between medium gain on a Q of 8 to a high gain Q of 4. So that's just taking a slim slice and making it wider. Let's hear what happens. So let's put the, so I've cleaned up my mids. Let's go to the high gain. Still on the neck, so this should be quite boomy. Okay, so that's what's happening in my EQ before the amp. There's no low cut or anything happening here, and again, I'm not adjusting anything here. I want to remove these frequencies. Then the EQs after the amp, the first one is dealing with the highs. So I'm coming in, removing everything, doing my low cut to 5K. Now what that's doing is taking, if 5K is here at the edge of the screen, that's taking a slope off down like this and then out to 0, all right? So, and it still leaves the 5K region for you to deal with, where I felt I needed to take out a bit of 5K, so I've done it on a notch Q -6 again. I've taken 4K the same, because in the Vox I found it was a frequency I didn't want. So we're going to do this next bit in a high gain, so we can hear the change more accurately. Still on the neck pickup. Now all those nasty highs have gone, and what I've done is I've boosted the highs here by +6 because I can. What I've done, I've taken out what I don't want, and I'm just making use of a very small area at the end, and I'm just boosting those highs using that hinge there. Okay, now I might experiment with this across the amps. The cut might be in a slightly different place, and I might boost this slightly differently, but that's the strategy at the moment. Then in this EQ here, I just felt that feels really flat, and I needed some spike, but also there's another frequency in there that's doing my head in. So I ended up boosting the 1.6 on that slightly wider Q I spoke about, not the widest, on a 1, the next one along, only by 3 dB. But I am cutting 2.5K, which is if you remember, sounds like that, nasty. Let's take that out. So now, without that EQ and then with, so I've got some bite now, and I don't have those nasties bugging me, and my low end doesn't feel too bad. But I could take the low end of one of my EQs here, and I think I might pick the one at the end of the chain. Let me just check. Yeah, let's pick this one. And I'm just going to take those, boost them. And my lows are so clean coming through the amp that there's no lumpiness, no woofiness. I'm pretty sure I could boost to 6 for effect. So I'm just going to boost by 1 though, and I'll see how that works in my mix. And I'm able to do that particularly because of this 160 and this 250, but on a tight cue, because actually 200's lovely, 125 and 100 are nice, but I'm cutting at 125, remember? Yeah, don't press the button. Right, so what I'm going to do is just show you a little, just going to save that patch quickly, come back to the neck. Now then, Paul, where did you put it? This one. Now I've got this one set up in a slightly different way. I did a patch for myself, which if you want, I'll link it below, where I talk about how I use it, how to set it up. But if you want a tutorial on how to set it up, just let me know below in the comments and I'll do one. But basically, this is like I'm using a multi-band EQ trick here. Now, I did have this split out 4-way, so I had 4 regions of frequencies, so the low mids, the high mids, and then the highs broken out. But I realized when I started using that tool that I needed to be dealing with the lows and low mids before the amp. So what I've done is I've taken the same strategies in here, 160 to low cut, just checking, 315, 500. We're going through a 2 notes at the moment. Okay, so over here is where I'm dealing with the amp EQ. So let's just go. I'm going to put this before my effects, I think. Now I could put this after the cabinet if I want. I can just move this around. But what happens is all the frequencies come into this side, and if I turn off this divide, let's put it onto that side, all I can hear is everything that comes through the amp up to 3.15 kilohertz. So I'm not hearing anything after that. So if there's a frequency annoying me in here, I can find it easier without any highs getting in the way. Lovely. And because I've been using these kind of tools, and as I say, I'll link that video below, I'm finding it really easy to just go, that's where that frequency I want is. Boom. And I know exactly what I want to do with it, and it's done. So now, using this as a tool, and this is just a template for me to look at amps. Let's go and listen to just the frequencies over. So here, if we go to we're listening to only frequencies between 3.15 and 5K. Where I've taken out 5K and I've taken out 4K. Okay, so on their own, that's what they sound like, and it's easier for me to find the frequencies I don't want in that range by just separating this out as a tool, and then afterwards, I can just change how I want the EQs to work. Well, what do you mean, Paul? Well, look, let's say I want to free up this divide now. I've understood the frequencies for the amp. Let's get the EQ. We'll get this one, and we'll go to the end, and we'll take the high cut off. That's all we need to do. And here, we're going to take the low cut off. And now, we're back to the patch that I talked through a minute ago. But I've been able to manage my frequencies. Does that make sense? And sometimes when I land on a new amp, I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Now I'm just like, yeah, let's break this out. So this is set up as a little template for me to do that. I'm not going to save, but what I am going to do is just show you what that was born from so you can understand it, which is this, where I've got just an amp, and after the cabinet here, I've got this structure using device where I split my signal up into 4 lanes, and each lane is dealing with a different frequency range. You see here the high cut 315 to 5, 315 for the high cut, and then 1K, so that's just dealing with those ranges. This one's dealing with just the range between 315 and 1K. So this is GT cab now. Let's turn off that verb. Yeah, but what you can do is you can just grab the whole thing and move it to your signal chain. So let's just move it to after the amp. Doesn't sound much different, almost sounds slightly better. Low sound worse there, but the low sounded better. So then you go, right, so maybe, and that's how I got to the other patch, is running the lows before, etc. So yeah, I'd encourage you to build a patch like that so that you can break down the frequencies and just understand it on the fly when you don't have access to a computer or anything that can do that for you. And it will help you understand the frequencies that you're working with within your modeler. Now, hopefully, it's been a very long video. I feel like I've been talking for a very long time. Hopefully, if you were a little bit in the dark about EQs, and particularly just using graphic EQs because it's what we know and it's what out there is stomp boxes to start with, hopefully I've shed a bit of light and given you a bit of confidence and power to go ahead and shape your tone using a parametric EQ, or possibly 4 of them. Remember, in each one you've got a lot of tools that you can use in just the one, whereas with a graphic EQ you're stuck. It is what it is. Okay, so yeah, hopefully you well enjoyed the session. Take care. Bye bye.